Greetings, everyone. Tony Mobley here. This is the inaugural Conversations with Tony Mobley. And we are here to talk about technology. I was going to say for ordinary people, but it's going to be for anybody. And so I guess I want to start with why we're here. Why are we here? Greetings, everyone. Tony Mobley here. This is the inaugural Conversations with Tony.
Are you asking that of the panelists, Tony?
Tony, so FYI, we're hearing the YouTube back in your mic, so be aware of that.
That's right.
So let me.
You want to mute your YouTube audio, right?
Going now.
Telek?
Yeah, so the output of YouTube wants to be off or in headphones so that it's not coming back into, and that's a good thing to talk about with, for people, is that when you have things on speakers, it can oftentimes come back into the mic and then
Okay.
especially those people that are talking in the panel can get really confused as they hear themselves again. So that's something to think about for everyone.
All right. So we.
And the thing about a YouTube stream is that it's about, 20 seconds behind. And so then it gets even more confusing because we hear ourselves in history.
I'd say less right now, less than 20 seconds, right? A little less. More than 5. Maybe more than 10.
I have a question for the panelists that were in the attendees section before you got here. What were you seeing? Were you seeing a gallery view or were you seeing Tony?
I was just seeing Tony.
Okay, so that means that probably Tony is in speaker view. And if Tony would be so kind as to throw me the host, then I will go ahead and start to cut the show. Hey, and then let me ask this, Tony, are you hearing us directly through Zoom? And my suggestion for you, Tony, is to maybe quit your YouTube completely. So we know it's definitely feeding out to YouTube. So go ahead and quit it completely and just be in Zoom, and
Okay,
we'll start with this.
Hasmukh is waiting to be promoted.
And Mr. Lopez Waterman.
I believe I am.
I think you're right. It is about 20 seconds delay.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Well, good morning or your good evening.
All right, so Tony, Hasmukh is here.
Okay, fantastic. Give me 1 second. I believe I have taken care of YouTube.
Sounds good now. We're not hearing it back.
Okay, YouTube is gone.
Great.
All right, so that's our first forward fail. And we're still good. Okay. Now it's saying that YouTube is still live. I'm not sure about that, but
yeah, that's good. You should keep
Yeah,
YouTube live. Just we don't want you to necessarily have it running in your system so that we can hear it back through into Zoom.
okay.
So you should be all set to go.
All right.
And Hasmukh is here, and off we go.
All right, fantastic. So I was about to tell you guys why we're here. So why are we here? We're here because about 14 months ago, about 15 months ago, I started cancer treatment. And I was able to get through that cancer treatment, and I was able to ring the bell on June 12th of 2020. So here we are now, a few days after me celebrating that event. And part of my journey was that I had an opportunity to participate with a group of extraordinary people in a group called Office Hours. And in that group, I was able to grow and learn some amazing, absolutely amazing things as far as video production. But more than that, I learned about conversation and the importance of conversation, and how conversation is a means of bringing people together, regardless of where they are politically, ethnically, or any other way. It was a way in which people can engage in conversations and make meaningful connections. The platform was used was video production, but it was more than that. And so as a consequence of having this office hours experience with Alex Lindsay, I would share some of the things that I was learning with my family. I have 6 other siblings, and we would have a Zoom meeting every Sunday night. And I would bombard them with these wonderful experiences that I was having with office hours. And they would patiently, tolerate me just bubbling up with these experiences that I was having in office hours. And because I was a part of the office hours I like to call brain trust, I was sharing all these things. And so one of my brothers said, listen, all of this great stuff that you're telling us about, you need to tell other people about it. And he was right, because one of the things that I have been wrestling with while I've been a part of office hours is that this is such great information, and I think it's important that it be shared with other people. And so that's why we're here. So another reason that we're here, and I think probably for most people, the most important reason why we're here, is Kimberly Mobley, who has allowed me to participate in office hours, and also allowed me to play with all of these wonderful gadgets that I have acquired from my start with office hours with a MacBook Pro 2012 and a pair of Apple corded earbuds. And so I want to officially thank her for allowing me to participate and play with you guys on office hours. Also want to say that part of the reason why we're here, and I hate to be redundant, but I think it's important to mention Alex Lindsay in the office hours group, because had it not been for them, then I wouldn't have all of these wonderful things to share. So what this is to try to share a small portion of what goes on in office hours with your everyday person, and to let the everyday person know that if you're using Zoom or Teams or StreamYard or anything, that you can get better at that. But not only that, but if you're a senior citizen who is struggling with technology, if you're a parent or a grandparent that wants to expose your child or grandchild to technology, this is going to be a vehicle for you to have conversation. That's what this is. And so, so we're going to get started. So today, I have a whole lot of guests, but my special guest is tuning in from Cape Town, South Africa, and it's 3 a.m. there. And his name is Dr. Hasmukh Gajjar. And if I mispronounce it, he will straighten me out in short order. He is a medical doctor who also has a full-fledged video production company and has embraced sharing technology with the citizens of South Africa. And so I want to say welcome, Hasmukh. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sacrificing to be here at 3 a.m. your time. Thank you so much, sir. And I'm going to give you the official welcome by office hours. Thank you, sir.
I'm greatly honored, Tony. Thank you very much. Thank you. Greatly honored. And for you and anybody else in the office hours, the family, most of us will do anything for the family at the snap of a finger. So I like you, I constantly improve every day, learn one small thing that takes, one step for mankind, kind of landing on the moon. Similar experience each day. Each day we learn something, and each day we make a tremendous stride moving forward. But like you said, Alex has shown unselfish dedication to all of us. And I think it rubs off on all of us. It cultivates a particular culture. And I think we all strive to maintain that camaraderie and culture to constantly learn, but more important, constantly teach and share what we know. So it's a great honor to be here. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, sir. And so we're going to ask that if you have questions that you put it in the Q&A, and my good friend, Mr. Flylock Lopez Waterman, is going to read the questions, and then we'll begin to answer. So I'm going to, as the questions are coming in, I'm going to start with a couple of questions of my own. And my first question is going to be, well, this is kind of a loaded question, but I'm going to go ahead with it. So what are you using to help people in South Africa with basic technology?
I have done this all my life, Tony, and it's probably one of the reasons why I gave up my medical practice. I stumbled into technology by accident rather than design. And understanding the South African history, we've always been what's termed the activists. And as an activist, you constantly do what you need to do to improve the situation in your nation, in your country. I am now 70, so I obviously have seen a lot in South Africa. Much has transpired. And as a young doctor, one became an activist whether you liked it or not. You were just imbued in the communal struggle, so to speak, politically, and as you know, the history of South Africa is quite colorful, to say the least. And what I found was that I actually did medicine because in our country, it was earmarked which schools you could go to and which schools you could not go to. So if I went to a school or of any other discipline besides medicine, I had to go to a school out in an area called Durban, which is on the east coast of South Africa. And each ethnic group had its own school. So I'm Indian in origin, although my grandfather came to South Africa in 1905. My dad was born here, I was born here. So I'm South African, but I had to go to Durban to study anything else besides medicine. So having the desire to come to Cape Town, I chose Cape Town University to study medicine. But long after my internship, and probably after 5 years in a hospital, I realized I've been a frustrated engineer. So I probably would have taken engineering as a discipline rather than medicine. Although we are about 18 doctors in the family, my son is a radiologist as well. So I'm the only maverick in the family that has not only left, that not only specialized, but also left the discipline. So I get riled about that almost every day. But now they understand I'm the doctor of technology these days. So the family loves me organizing family events. But as a young doctor, you know, you were thrown in the areas where people needed help during the agitation. People were hurt. People were. In my practice, which you were politicized whether you liked it or not, you know. So if I may, is this okay if I narrate? Am I?
Yes. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I had a very good medical practice, and in I think it was 1984, 83, we had what they called here in our country the state of emergency, which allowed enormous powers to the authorities and police. And when there was agitation, obviously people got hurt, people were chased around, and they would seek medical help. And so a lot of them would stumble into my practice, and you would attend to them. But then the police one day came into my practice and demanded my notes on all the individuals that I treated, because they were going after those who were agitating. And obviously in that state of emergency, there was no due call, and people would just be simply jailed. So that's really when I became very heavily politicized. But I had a computer in my practice. My first computer was an Apple IIe, and I had my IBM PC, and I was quite comfortable with this technology. So I started creating a database of doctors who would not give in to such police action. So I had a huge database of about 180 doctors in our region, and luminaries who are in politics these days, like Archbishop Tutu and others, kind of hung on to me for tech support. So I had a huge color laser printer, and they would come in the evening and print their posters. So I was the tech support for this community that was agitating for their rights. And obviously one thing led to another, and then I just stayed in technology. And so I then got into business of technology, but I never joined businesses for economic reasons, but I joined business for causes. So one cause was to transform large business into meaningful participation by those who were for centuries kept out of the economy. And I was fortunate enough to be asked by our new government to head up some organizations. And I chaired the Internet Authority here. I chaired the previous president's Education Trust, and so on and so on. So I was well known by the politicians, but I never became a politician. I actually don't like politicians. I keep my distance from politicians, you know. They don't ever get anything done, you know. So I'm a doer. I just get on and do it. But one of my appointments was to head up our largest mobile company, part of Vodafone. And again, I was tasked to go in and transform the organization. That's the big word here in South Africa, transform the organization. So I learned a lot about mobile technology there and fixed line technology. And realized that although the mobile device was having a huge impact, the majority of our people were still kept out of the economy. And so I realized that education was becoming critical. And therefore, probably for the last 7 or 8 years, I've spent my time trying to educate people to be smart with their smartphone. And I worked in our areas, the sort of underserviced areas, and realized that 80% of our people had a smartphone in their pocket, but they would line up in front of banks, in front of the ATMs to do transactions, whereas I sit on my butt at home having breakfast, doing transactions on my mobile phone. So I figured out that although we have 50 million smartphones in South Africa, the majority of our population are not able to use a smartphone to increase productivity or personal growth, and also to do very basic digitally based access to service or information. So that's how for the last 4 or 5 years, I formed a company which is called MobiLearn. And through MobiLearn, I essentially do non-profit content. So right now, I create a lot of video-based content. And constantly and every day, I teach somebody how to access technology and how to use the mobile device.
Fantastic, sir.
We have a huge battle, Tony, here. 80% of our internet connected devices is through the mobile phone. And therefore I agitate and I participate to try and change the average worker, the average shop steward, to make them digitally literate. If they digitally literate, then they can help their children to understand how digital devices can be explored to uplift their own conditions. So that's what I do.
Okay. So I was going to ask you to make sure that you put the link into your website, but Roscoe is taking care of that. Thank you, Roscoe, for doing that. So we do have a couple of questions, and really, I know that we really could go on with just you, but
Talking.
we want to also we also want to respect the fact that it is 3 a.m. your time, and so we are happy to have you stay. I know that there are already a few questions that are going to be that are directed at you. So I'm going to ask you to hold on for as long as you can. And if you need to go before we finish, just let me know. So
All
go
right,
ahead
so
with the first question.
Our first question is from Liberty White, and she asks, what would you tell your younger self to help prepare them for the past year and coming out of the pandemic?
Wow, that's a heavy question. You know, hindsight can be an exact science. So we learn as we go along. I do dwell on the past to better understand what I could have done better. And I think all of us do that. And that's the way you learn. I think that this pandemic is something that has, turned our world upside down. And in the sort of developing countries, even more so than those who are economically much stronger. I don't know if I would have done anything better, but what this pandemic has done is starkly shown in our country the lack of resources, like our health services. So for myself, I think we need to be far more assertive in the way we agitate for change. We need to be far more focused on the areas that need to change to improve everybody's lives. So for me personally, I feel extremely privileged, but I think I'm not sure if I would have done anything differently to what I'm doing right now. I think the only thing I can say, constantly be open to speak to others and have good interpersonal relationships. That's really how I stumbled on Alex as well. So we had lunch about 8-9 years ago, and I stumbled on his email and joined office hours. So yeah, not much that I could have changed.
Thank you so much. Next question.
Next question is from Steve Cotton. And the question is there a digital divide in South Africa? And if there is there a program nationally to equalize technology?
Yes and yes. As I said, we are an extremely divided nation. We had 300 years of colonization and probably about 60 years of apartheid system. So the division is extreme, very extreme. I think they call it the Gini coefficient, where the gap between the extremely wealthy and the poor is constantly widening. And I speak a lot to many folks. The irony is that digitization is accelerating the divide. That's the irony of digitization. So we find that our past and much of the present dictates those who do economically well and those who don't. So based on our past, a certain section of our community that is doing extremely well economically in the digital space. But what it's also done is that businesses do not have to rely on customers in South Africa anymore. You can have customers globally. So the sense of contributing to the country in terms of nation building has become less of an incentive, because now one can operate anywhere, anytime, and be economically active if you're digitally ready. So our divide is enormous, really enormous. Technology has a role to play. Unfortunately, our government has become very defocused on the needs of the country. Like most liberation organizations that become the government, there's a certain pattern and a path that is traversed. Fortunately, we have good leadership right now, excellent leadership, and we are turning the corner. And I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful of my country. But I think I need many more people who are actively participating and doing what they need to do, instead of being armchair critics of politicians and any other leadership. You got to get down, do what you need to do, and ask yourself every day, did I make a difference to my country today? How did I contribute?
Wow. Thank you, sir. We also want to let panelists know at this time, if you want to raise your hand, you can raise your hand. And I'm sure we have some more questions. So let's go with the next question.
So the next question is from an anonymous attendee. And the question is, what would your advice be for those who are still just dipping their toes in the tech waters to get online with friends, family, work, doctors, school, etc.? How about for those that are sort of in already, but sort of in already, but are ready to go fully back to everything in person as soon as possible?
Well, I think when we all gonna be back to normal is a big question, if normal is ever gonna be normal. I think we're gonna have waves of this pandemic in one form or another. Hopefully we will all the nations, global nations, will do a better job than what we've done so far in terms of managing global pandemics. I would most certainly, I find that the younger generation, it takes to technology with no problem. It's the older generation that needs help. It's the older generation that needs the support. And my advice to my wife is just dip your hands in it. Don't be afraid. So phobia to tech is an enormous barrier, but a benevolent, sympathetic support is always very helpful. So I think all of us, what we need to do, that those who understand technology and practice technology every day, we need a lot of patience. And the trick is to be a good teacher, is to talk about the basics. Often we get carried away with techno jargon, and that puts people off. So in fact, bulk of our content is targeted to the average worker, the elderly. And so whether the pandemic stays or not, one has to embrace technology. If you're not in technology, you're going to be left behind. So it's important to jump into the water. You will be able to swim, no problem.
I think it's important that you reference your wife. So I think it's important that you share a little bit about that part. And we do have some hands up. So just share why you reference your wife and some of the things that she has done.
My wife is tech phobic, unlike me. And she's a good cook, but she's technically not very good. So every day I have to be extremely patient. Most times she forgets passwords, so I have to remember all her passwords. And I try and teach her how to use technology. She's improved tremendously, but it's just the nature of the personality, you know, and you have to support the individuals, whether it's your wife or your brother or your father or your mother. You the tech doctor. So yes, my wife is a wonderful person. We married 46 years, but technically I support her, and nutritionally she supports me.
So, Hasmukh hadn't said this, but I'm going to go ahead and say this now. Um, um, his wife is a fantastic cook. We have all had an opportunity to participate in a program called Mad in the Kitchen. And she was one of the guest chefs. Her interaction with the guest chefs and the audience was fantastic. And everyone was moved by her engagement in her delivery and the way in which she kept all of us glued to this conversation about cooking and what she was doing. And she did not leave a cook behind in terms of her efforts of making sure that everyone felt included. And Flalak has his hand raised, I think. Go ahead, sir.
So I think that I'm just looking back at my experience with my elderly father, and he is only one year older than you, Hasmukh.
Oh, okay.
And he and I'm sorry to have used the word elderly there, but he does not have the same kind of ability with technology that you do. And so I have had to find ways to help him. And it's an important part of my nearly daily life, you know. And so when I do that, I will sometimes screen share into his computer and help him with certain things in that way. Or I will explain to him what buttons and what swipes to use on an iPad. It's very, very hard to remember all of those things because they get to be in our muscle memory. And so for those of you that are getting help from any of us or people like us, also please have patience with us, because we sometimes don't know how to put words to that which is part of muscle memory. And so it is the sort of thing that I do without thinking when I swipe up to bring ourselves back to the home screen on an iPad, or I say words and use vocabulary that is part of my everyday language that is not part of the everyday language of somebody who is just coming to this. So it is very easy for us to have patience lapses, and sometimes I think the reverse can be true. So bear with us. We'll do the best that we can to help explain how things go, what things are, and why things happen. And a lot of times things do happen, and that is the moment in which my father is the most annoyed, because he's used to things working. And so I will say that I don't know that 100% answers your question. To answer your question a little bit more acutely, I will say that I think the practice makes perfect. And so if you can get on to Zoom calls, come to conversations with Tony Mobley, and be here with us, enjoy it, and then come on the panel, and things will start to move. That would be my thoughts.
Thank you so much for that. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, thank you. Along these lines, and I've just kind of thought of this. So this is to Hasmukh and to you, Taylor. I can't imagine doing this on mobile. I couldn't imagine being, involved in all this on an iPhone or even an iPad. I don't own an iPad. I haven't in all these. So my question is it possible, given the different cultures in the US, it's more of an affluent Western country, in South Africa, in the whole globe, is there any possibility of getting people off mobile devices onto a better platform of a laptop, at least a laptop? And I think that's where there's more control, more involvement, more engagement. I at my age, and I'm close to Hasmukh and your father, uh, I couldn't imagine living my life on an iPhone. I have an iPhone, of course, but I couldn't imagine doing this or even most of my life in engaging. So there's much more engagement on the next level, the next platform. And I'm wondering, is it at all possible to get your average South African off a mobile device, which is accessible to the next level? And I think that would bring, and you too, Tony, your congregation. I would like to see more of them here, and I think in the weeks to come we will see more of them. But
Well,
right, am I right? Get platform, laptop or desktop?
let me say this. Um, part of this conversation is that, Zach, I agree with you that if in fact everything was, and here I go against what we talk about in office hours and being a little political. If it was a perfect world and everyone had access to all of the resources that were available, then it would be a good thing. Unfortunately, that's not the world in which we live right now. So part of this conversation, part of the reason that we're here is to try to figure out where people are and try to bring them up with what they have. We know in office hours to do things right, there is an actual prescription to have the best video quality, to have the best sound quality, to be able to put on the most spectacular video production that anybody can imagine. And people are part of office hours have already done it. But that's not really why we're here. Why we're here is to try to figure out how we can help people who are overwhelmed with what they currently have. Yeah. And how they can get better. So part of the conversations that will be coming in the coming weeks will be about how parents and children can get better with the existing technology. We have educators and professionals that will help people where they are try to get better. And that's kind of,
I understand that. You're absolutely right. I do understand that, but it's hard. I think it's harder given that small screen.
It's harder. It is, but also remember, this same pocket computer that we all walk around with was not as powerful as the rockets that took men to the moon. And so, that's something just to file away. And so we have a couple of hands. So Flala, go ahead first, and then Roscoe.
Just quickly to say, we can talk about things with the cameras that you all have. Bring them a little further up, put them on on 3 or 4 books. I've got problematic lighting right now. And that's because it's what I've got. I reached over and grabbed my wife's desk lamp and I pointed it at my face. It's pretty harsh. And I don't mean to look harsh in this particular thing. It's just what I had right now. And so but it's better than not having it at all. And so I think that is something for all of us to think about when we don't have a situation where we can have equipment. We look at what we have, and what we have are, maybe an iPhone or an iPad or a webcam, and or even a laptop. And then we have to figure out, okay, so how do we put the laptop up a little higher, get it on a couple of books, maybe put a table lamp on two sides of us so that you don't have what I have here, where it's just light on one side and dark on the other. And then you're off to the races, and you've just grabbed 2 books from the shelf.
Roscoe.
Yeah, I rarely buy anything new. Even Apple products, I do have an M1 laptop, but unless it's really revolutionary, there's so much technology in stuff that was built 2 years ago. And my example will be my mother loved the moment that she realized she could talk to a phone and say, call my daughter, and the phone would connect her up. She didn't input the contacts. I did. She did. There's a lot of us that we do as technology people that enable people. And in education, our job is to inspire. Show them what the product can be, set up everything for them, make it so that they cannot move outside of the guardrails or the bumpers, whatever you want to call them. I don't know if you've ever bowled where they put the things up and the ball cannot miss the pins. That's our job. Make sure they can't miss the pins, and then let them have that moment, let them be inspired, and then start to introduce them to the technology and let them expand on that. I'll stop there.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, another thing to consider with mobile technology is how, as Tony was saying, how powerful that small little computer is. There's a young man who's an entrepreneur in town that I've been mentoring, and he built an entire production company.
Tony, Paul, can I interrupt you for a second? Can you
Yeah.
bring your mic up a little bit?
Yeah, hold on
can't
one
hear you
second.
very well.
Let me bump it over here.
And this is another thing you can do, is you can actually let people know when you can't hear them, and that helps in a Zoom
How's that
meeting.
now? Is that any better?
That's a lot better. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, we don't have a Mickey check today. So he started an entire production company with 3 phones tied into a laptop, and those were his cameras. So he was running he built a streaming business during COVID, using his iPhones as his primary cameras to run an entire business, and then built the clientele up. So there's a lot you can do with what's in your pocket. Just know how to apply it. So I think the mobile technology is a great enabler, and learning how to use the tools that are built in and what apps are available to leverage opportunities with a very low barrier to entry. So it's just application of low cost tech to do really wonderful things.
Thank you, Paul. And Flalik, I'm going to ask you to bring in my surprise guest of Jared Mobley. Can you bring him up to the panel? And while he is coming up, we're getting near the end of the hour. And so there were a couple of things that I want to try to get done because as I said in the very beginning, I want to be respectful of time. So I'm going to ask we can have one more question and answer, and then we're going to.
We have 2 questions. Would you like to choose which one we should answer there, Tony?
Let's try to answer both of them. Let's see if we can.
All right. Thank you. I just muted myself before trying to ask the question here. This is also from an anonymous attendee. For everyone, what's your next big tech step to move to your next level? What's your advice to those thinking they want to do more with tech but don't know what or where to go next?
So I'm gonna raise my hand to answer that one. So and I've been really wrestling with this. So after having been a member of office hours, I understand very clearly the tools and the costs associated with those tools in terms of being able to do something that's highly professional and of good quality. And I would say there's tons of things that we talk about often on office hours that I'm not going to share here. My answer to the question is, if you are really interested in those things, that you come to office hours. I'm going to ask that you come to office hours. It's on every day of the week. Only Sunday is not recorded on YouTube. On Saturday, we have this fantastic group of educators and video production specialists that participate in a fantastic conversation. So I'm going to ask that you come and please consider participating in office hours to get the answer to that question. And I'm not trying to be rude or anything like that, but this is the thing that I want everybody to understand. This is about helping every single person get better. That's what this is. I encourage you to be a geek like me and hang out in office hours during the week and hang out on Saturday with these great educators from all over the globe who are wrestling with how to help students get better. So that's going to be the answer to this particular question. Next question.
All right. Next question is from Emily Russo in Red Hook, New York. How did you find the courage to be an agitator in a divided country? That's for Hasmukh.
Yes.
Well, I think that I guess in any country, if change needs to happen and you know what is right and what is wrong, morally, ethically, politically, when one understands that there is a lot of wrong things that need to be righted, one naturally is participating in making the change. So agitation is not a elective choice you make. You just get consumed by the need to make change. So I think every South African, and I need to be careful here how I phrase it politically speaking, but every individual on the wrong side of the railway is born an agitator, and that's what you do. So it's not a choice we made, we were thrust into it. To answer Emily, but just to answer Zach's earlier question about mobile technology, it's not possible to live a full digital lifestyle just with a mobile device. That we have to agree. We live with multiple screens and multiple devices. So, however, Tony and everybody is correct. We have to optimize and maximize what people have. And therefore, whether it's a smartphone, we still need to teach them how to be smart with the smartphone. So our older generation and those who are tech phobic, we need to hand a hold even with that device. So often a lot of companies and non-profit organizations try and teach people to become digitally literate, and they teach them on desktops and laptops. But when the individuals go away, they don't have a device to practice on. So I try and encourage and promote the fact that you can teach everybody the suite of Google apps, but do it on their smartphone. Because what they can do on a smartphone, they can do on a desktop. So whether they use Google Apps, Google Sheets, Google Docs, teach them on the phone, not on the desktop.
Thank you, sir. Flylock,
and
yes, sir.
Just real quick, I know that there's a generational thing here as well. Many people in that I teach in the college age, and I've heard from primary school age groups, are writing their entire papers on their phones, and are working with their thumbs, or maybe adding a keyboard to it. And so some of our mentality about phone usage comes from a particular point of view. So I will just remind us about that.
Very
Okay.
true. Very true. I was thinking of the older generation, and I'm thinking for their own engagement. Not so much we want to instruct them on good practices, on looking good and this, which is sort of the other end. I'm thinking more of their own enjoyment of engagement in the technology, whereas I was thinking the small phone can be frustrating in this, so I'm thinking, just for their own enjoyment in being engaged in digital technology. A little easier to have a bigger screen, more functionality, but all your points, so well taken, so true. Thank you.
Thank you,
Looks like we
sir.
have no questions left behind. So it's all you now, Tony.
Okay, so part of my vision for this was for us to have, when we have these conversations, that we have a lab. And so the lab for today is, the subject of the lab is my son, Jared. And he is on today. And so I'm just going to describe the lab for you very quickly. So the lab is, he, like I, had a MacBook Pro. My MacBook Pro has died and then is now buried, never, ever to come back unless I want to throw away $600. So my MacBook is dead. Now his is working, but it's a little close to being on life support. I'm just going to be honest. So he has purchased a M1 Mac Mini, but he does not have a webcam. So the lab for today was this afternoon, because he works at night and he has sacrificed to come on camera with me, his father. He didn't really want to be on camera at all, but he decided he'd sacrifice for me tonight to come on camera. And you are looking at him connected to his M1 Mac Mini using his personal iPhone as a webcam, because he didn't have one. So that's the lab for tonight. And so, Jared, could you share how easy it was for you to connect this all up?
Excuse me. Well, good evening, everybody, or good morning if that's for you. Honestly, after I got the system connected, plugged in the cable, got my phone set up on a little tripod right here. Easy as can be, thankfully. 5-minute process, if that.
And what's the software that you use to connect?
Awesome.
Epoch, I believe it is.
All right. And so let me just share a little bit about that. So it was $7.99 for him to connect his iPhone to a computer. This application, if I'm not mistaken, works. He's using an iPhone, but it does also work on Android. Or let me say, it works on Mac computers as well as Windows computers. It did cost $7.99, and there are applications that will allow you to do the same thing that Jared did at a low cost or free. However, this one I know is a proven effective way to connect. And so that's why I shared this particular one tonight. And there will be other labs that we will do from time to time on our weekly conversations. But I think it's important to not just talk about things to do that can help, but actually demonstrate some things that work. This we know work. Epoch Cam works. It does cost $8, but it works. And he looks pretty good. And so this is something that you can share with your family and friends. Those of you who are watching and listening. This is a way that an inexpensive way that you can connect using what you actually have in your hand, your Android phone or your iPhone. And so that's it as far as the lab is concerned. Jared, thank you so much for staying up and helping out your old dad. I appreciate you. Love you, boy.
Looks great,
Okay.
Jared. Looks great.
John Pruitt has his hand for a while.
Okay, John, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that this is a fantastic thing you're doing, Tony, and I'm really feel privileged that I gotten to know you through office hours, and I'm glad I could be here tonight. And even more so to Hasmukh, I just want to say that it was very fascinating to hear a lot more about you than I knew before, and I feel even more privileged to have gotten an opportunity to know you as well. Just there's so many great people through office hours that it's just amazing. So thanks, Tony, and thank you, Hasmukh, for coming tonight.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate those words. You've been very supportive as everyone in office hours has been. And so we are a little bit over, but I'm going to ask for forgiveness since this is our first actual conversation broadcast. I want to give out some special thanks, and I think it's important. So special thanks to the Global Family and Friends, Alex Lindsay and the Office Hour members, the DVE store who powers this webinar, and the Video 360 webcam 3C 4K camera, which I am using. And the reason why I lift them up, I think it's important to lift them up. I don't know if they'll hear about this or know about this at all, but that's not why I'm mentioning them. I'm mentioning them because at the height of the pandemic, when it first started, they made it their business to give educators webcams so that they can engage with their children or students in at the beginning when webcams were no longer available. And so I think it's important to shout them out because they did a fantastic thing and they are still helping educators. So those of you educators who are listening, keep them in mind. If you get into dire straits, they are more than willing to help you out. And that's the Video 360 company. I just want to say that Conversations with Tony Mobley series, Technology for People at Any Age, will continue on next week. And I'm going to go ahead and announce our special guests and we have guests and then we have special guests. And so you see all the guests. Hasmukh was our special guest for this week. I want to thank the guests, the special guests. I want to thank all of you for coming and participating. And I could not do this without all of you, everyone, family, friends, all of you. Thank you so much. I just want to share that our special guest next week is Mrs. Emily Russo. She is a technology integrationist specialist, K through 12. She is a dynamo. So you want to be here next week to hear from her, as well as our other panel guests. She will be able to share some things during this summer that might be beneficial to your children and grandchildren. So I ask that you tune in next Wednesday. She is going to be our special guest. And so with that, again, I want to say thank you so much. Conversations with Tony Mobley, a website is coming. It is coming. It's on the way. It's coming. And so with that, I'm just going to say that this is the end of our broadcast for tonight. We're just, looks like 8 minutes over. And so again, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we could have gone on. I do not want to end. I'm going to be honest. I want to hear more from Hasmukh and more from this panel and more from those who are participating by asking questions. I really want more, but I'm going to be respectful of your time. So we're going to end at this time. And so those office hour members, if you have time and want to engage in a review of our first conversation, that's fine. I'm going to ask somebody just to put in a link and Mukana or Discord, and we'll talk about that. And I'm going to let my friend Flylock to have the last word for tonight.
Oh, thank you. So thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for coming to this inaugural Conversations with Tony Mobley. I think, Tony, you are starting something absolutely fantastic here. So let's keep it up.
Okay. We don't have any closing music, so I'm just going to wave to you guys and say, have a good